tell us a little bit about this financial crisis and the implications of us being humans in the decision making that we usually do, and how we can eventually, understand this financial crisis in a different aspect.
Yeah. I think it's almost impossible to understand the financial crisis without getting into behavioral factors. I think it's safe to say in a world that consisted only of econs, we would not be in a financial crisis. Mistakes were made at every level. So we know that the heart of this financial crisis started with mortgages. Mortgages in the U.S. and to some extent in Great Britain. Now, in the U.S., they were mostly the subprime mortgages for people who didn't qualify for a regular mortgage. Now, I think it's fair to say that many of the people who took out those mortgages didn't understand the terms of the mortgage. Now, one reason is mortgages have become more complicated. It used to be all mortgages in the U.S. were the same. They were a 30-year mortgage with a fixed rate for the life of the mortgage. In that environment, it's very easy to make a choice. Pick the lowest interest rate, you're done. Now, these mortgages have variable rates. They have what are called teaser rates, which is a low startup rate, and then the rate goes up. They have balloon payments and all kinds of other features. Now, it's difficult to understand all the terms, all the details of that mortgage. Many people made mistakes. Now, of course, some of them were simply being greedy. They took out a mortgage that they knew they wouldn't be able to pay off once the rate reset. But many others made an honest mistake and were often sold that mortgage by a mortgage broker who was trying to nudge them into taking out a mortgage. And remember incentives, the mortgage broker got paid for how many mortgages he issued, not by how many mortgages got paid off. Well, it's not too surprising that the unsophisticated segment of the population doesn't understand all the terms of a complex financial instrument like a mortgage. What's more surprising is this same bounded rationality, as we call it in the book, applies at the very top of the markets. The biggest mistakes were made by the CEOs and other leaders of the largest financial institutions in the world. Now, what did they not do? They didn't understand these complex mortgages, and in particular, the way mortgages had been repackaged and securitized into different tranches, and there were all these complex mortgage-backed securities. Now, there were people in their firms who understood them, but those people were borrowing a lot of money and making highly levered investments, and I think it's fair to say that the CEOs of those companies didn't understand what their employees were doing. They didn't understand the risks that those employees were taking, because if they did understand, they would never have allowed it to happen. What we've witnessed is small parts of gigantic firms like Lehman Brothers, like Bear Stearns, like AIG, completely bankrupted by one segment, the segment that was trading mortgage-backed securities. Now, that's just poor management, and I don't think we would see that without the complexity. So, if I'm manufacturing chairs and I'm the CEO I understand what goes into a chair. If somebody built a bad chair, okay, it may cost the firm money. It can't drive the company into bankruptcy. These highly levered investments can drive the company into bankruptcy, and that's what we observed happened. So I think that to understand this crisis, we have to understand that when the world gets much more complicated, everybody's going to have trouble with it, even the most sophisticated people in the financial system.